Hello, everyone. I am writer-director Robert Christopher Smith, and this is the director's commentary for Vengeance Turns, Volume 2. It's interesting because when David Ruano and I decided to, for sure, split this movie into two, I remember coming down to him and bringing that exact point up and to discuss with him. And before I even was done explaining my idea, he jumped in and was like, "Yeah, we'll break it when Mia gets poisoned, and then Volume 2 will start with her hallucinations, her dreams." Oops, spoiler alert! Spoiler alert, guys, if you haven't seen it yet. Yeah, I really enjoyed working with these kids, man. We had some great child actors involved on Vengeance Turns, and they really liked doing the zombie stuff. It's fun. I'll put some BTS stuff out onto the Lethal Voice newsletter so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But this scene overall, starting the movie out like this, it really gives us some interesting opportunities. Number one, it establishes a completely different feel for Volume 2, more horrific. And it also gives us the opportunity to revisit her past, which is great. But more importantly, for audiences, if we have somebody in the audience that has never seen Vengeance Turns Volume 1, they can watch this movie, and just through the hallucination and the dream sequence here at the beginning, they can get caught up pretty quickly and really have an idea and understand what's going on. That's what David and I felt, when we decided to split the movies, and that's the way I still feel today. I feel like it was successful, and I love starting it off with all this horror and carnage and mayhem. And it's kind of neat too. Once you look at it on another level, you see Mia processing her life and her changes, which is what a lot of the movie is about. Vengeance turns, vengeance turns. Rebecca into Mia. I had never worked with After Effects before, so doing a lot of this stuff was really tricky, and I ended up recruiting David Ruano back in to help me just for pieces of this dream sequence because it was really plaguing me. The dream sequence, in fact, is probably the only thing that Amanda and I did not agree on when during the writing process for Vengeance Turns. If you've heard the Lethal Voice podcast, then you probably know Amanda was more grounded in her writing. But that had literally been one of the things that I had, wanted to have her as a co-writer for me, was the idea of grounding certain things. I had gone off on a tangent and really almost made this thing into like a Marvel kind of movie in the first, version of the script that I was writing. And it was Amanda who helped really kind of ground it, make it feel more realistic, and center it into the emotional aspects of the story. Um, so she and I had the one disagreement, and that was about this dream sequence, and particularly about a character that you'll see in a minute called the Voice in Darkness. And because she had wanted to keep it more grounded, the idea of having an otherworldly character, a spirit guide of some sort, was not as appealing to her as it was to me. But I really liked it on many levels. I liked it because it digs into another level that we have not experienced in Vengeance Turns yet, and that is that there is kind of a metaphysical level. But because she's being drugged, it does not necessarily imply to the viewer that, yes, this is real. But at the same time, because she's been drugged by delicate poison and this whole thing is fairly ritualistic, maybe this guy is real and maybe all this is real. And so the words he speaks are fairly prophetic. He's a sort of a prophet, and the character to me was a blast to portray as well. The actor is literally Paula Luelmo, the actor who plays Mia here. That's her husband, and so the blanket that he's wrapped in is right off of my bed. All of this sequence is shot in my bedroom, back in Gardena, California. Her crawling around, the voice in darkness waving his arms around in that blanket. All of that was filmed in a small apartment and in my bedroom in that small apartment. And again, I'll put a few pictures out on the Lethal Voice newsletter for anybody that's listening to this. You can always go check that kind of stuff, and the Instagram as well for Vengeance Turns, and I'll put some of that out there for you to see. Part of Vengeance Turns Volume 2 was, of course, the balance and the idea of Rebecca completely shedding the persona of Rebecca and settling into becoming Mia. And so that was another reason why I liked having this like otherworldly character, and this whole scene here with the hallucination and the kind of dream sequence thing was because it really is a pivotal moment for the character, and I want it to be big as far as what's on the screen. It should be a memorable moment. And honestly, as you're going to see in a minute, her life is completely different after this. So whether this character is real and actually some kind of spirit guide, or whether he is the manifestation of her own like psyche and her own mind, guiding her and prompting her and pushing her, it's up to you to decide. But it's the voice in darkness is definitely a sign that things are changing for Mia. There we see the bird again. It's a callback. We see that similar shot in Vengeance Turns Volume 1 when Mia is talking to Simon about going back and seeing her home. Making movies is so much fun. It's so much fun to see somebody like in the behind the scenes footage. She's laying on a box over top of a green screen and just kicking her legs and stuff. But here it's all, bathed in fire. Putting nudity into any film is a little sensitive, and Paula was actually, as always, most of the actors are more comfortable with it actually than I am. And for this particular part, again, it was me and David who was shooting it, and the makeup person, and that was it. All of us just in a green screen room. In the kind of overlay, you see Ghost with Silent Knives Protects and Delicate Poison, played by Nevin Milan and Kelsey Jaffer. And that's an original little tune that Kelsey wrote. Because again, we didn't want to take and steal anything directly from, anything that we found, like from the Kumeyaay. And so we kind of just, instead of appropriating stuff, we tried to invent stuff as much as possible. And so that was a little effort from Kelsey there that really worked out nicely. Now here, again, I always refer to this part, I think the chapter is even called Falcone Reborn. And this to me right here is neat, because this is literally what I consider her rebirth after the whole gestation in the other world of the hallucination. Here we see her actually being reborn. And we'll see her, her new claw, the second iteration of the claw. It's another thing that we really did purposely, and we would talk about it on set. It was like, version 1, version 2. Before we knew that there was going to be a volume 1 and volume 2, we would walk around on set and say, we need the V1 claw or the V2 claw. That was a little bit prescient. We didn't know that we were predicting the future there, but it turned out that we were. Because the first claw is in volume 1, V1, as we call it now, and this upgrade claw is in volume 2. This is one of my favorite scenes out of both movies. when she is basically having to kind of graduate and do her little test, to prove that she's healed and trained. And instead of wanting to fight a woman, she insists on fighting Ghost with Silent Knives Protects. I like the scene on paper. I liked it when me and Amanda wrote it. And I like the way that it plays out, especially considering, all the challenges that we faced. If you notice, like, there's really not anybody close to a Native American in our background people. We advertised for them but could not get any. And so again, that plays into the idea where the Lost People were not a tribe of Native Americans. They were a tribe established by some Native Americans, and really just more of a catch-all for anybody that was lost and needed a family. Their fight is really interesting. I like the dynamic, the back and forth. And of course, shooting it was cool because we really wanted to play with the size difference here. Paula is small. She's a small girl. And Nevin is fairly large for guys. So putting them together like this is really, a nice dynamic. Amanda wrote this fight, and I kind of just set it up for her. And what I told her was, I want to see the female character. I want to see her get original in her thinking. And when she sees that she's going to be overwhelmed and she's going to be overcome, what does she do in order to, make her comeback? And as you see at first here, she's just, running right at him, and she's giving it everything she's got, but it barely makes Ghost flinch. And in a minute, you'll see, what she ends up doing is pretty startling to the viewer and to Ghost, and so it works. And as far as the rhythm of the movie, it leads right into the next scene, which we'll talk about that when we get there as well. All of us really had fun shooting these stunt scenes. Paula was a trooper. She literally rehearsed for days and days. As far as we went out to a park a few times to do some stunts. And then the day of the shoot, she would sit there and practice and rehearse. And we didn't have stunt people. So every stunt you see is my actors doing this stuff. And they really rehearsed and worked it out to make it look good and to be safe. She's using the famous prop rock. There's a few props that were bought for Vengeance Turns, and they ended up with stories around them. One is the eyeball. The eyeball has been used in basically every movie that I've done. And then that rock, man, it cost like a couple dollars, but it got lost for a while during the filming of Vengeance Turns, and we had the entire cast and crew out looking for this one, like I said, few dollar prop rock, and then finally found it. And when she uses it in the scene, you can barely see it. But it's still around too. It's made it into other movies now as well. I literally now, when I start writing something, I'll take a look at what props and what wardrobe and stuff I have available, and sometimes that actually helps kind of dictate what I'm going to develop. Oh, here's the scene. So she gets her arm. That's her kind of lame arm. It's like stuck inside her shirt. And rather than lose, she rips off her shirt. It's a surprise to everybody watching. It's a surprise to Ghost. And then she snaps him in the face like a towel, charges him. And here's one of those stunts that we rehearsed a lot. And she chokes him and makes him give up. And I love Simon's reactions. David did a great job of shooting this. I like these shots. And I like the rhythm of it as well. We go right from her having beaten him, and I don't think he let her beat him. I think that he ends up relenting and tapping out at the end just to end it. But she legitimately kicked his butt, and it's kind of cool the way that we transition from her victory here to, as you're going to see, it'll transition right into inside Ghost's tent where they continue. But again, I had Amanda write this scene as well, and all I really noted her on it when we were talking about it, developing it, was I said I want to see that whereas normally the guy is dominant in bed, we think about it that way anyway. I want to see this change in Mia. And so we'll flash back between the softer lovemaking that she had with her husband to this more rougher animalistic sex that she's having with Ghost, and that she's really driving it. And it was important that we see her in control, but it's like she's trying to like exorcise demons or something like that. She's not just doing this for pleasure. Again, there's still this process that started during that dream sequence that the movie begins with, of her kind of almost like cauterizing, just burning a line, of who she was and who she is now. And it seems like going to bed with Ghost here is part of that. And you'll see that like we play that up as well, because as they finish in a minute, he is we like reversing the dynamics. I like doing that in a lot of parts of my stories and stuff, no matter what. But at the end of this, she's just trying to go to sleep, rolls over, wants to go to sleep, and he's still trying to talk to her. So again, we were trying to reverse what people think of as the stereotypes. And shooting a nude scene and shooting a sex scene it's not fun. It's people, I guess kids maybe might think that, wow, it's really cool or fun. It's not. It's very mechanical. It's a little embarrassing. And again, I think that I was more, embarrassed than anybody else involved. And I sat there basically with a checklist that we had already all approved. And we just kind of like read right down through it. And it was like, okay, you're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. Put your leg here. Put his arm there. And we would just shoot. And, we shot it all out. And then when you edit it together, it actually looks like there's actual sex happening, but there's nothing close to it, inside that tent. And again, I don't know if you remember mentioning this in the commentary for Vengeance Turns Volume 1, but that tent, all the interior scenes were in the backyard of David Ruano's house. Here she is basically telling him to mind his own business. Again, kind of reversing that dynamic where after they have had sex, he's wanting to tag along and she's like, hey, look, I got what I needed. Now chill. And Simon comes in and is great at providing comic relief to a little bit, kind of diffusing the situation, but also helping to change gears and shift the scene. And just like in the first movie, we wanted Delicate Poison to earn her name. This scene gives her a chance to do that. There were a few things that we had to change just for logistical reasons between what was in the script and what we were actually able to shoot. And so there's a few times that we found ourselves actually doing some exposition on screen to explain why certain things are happening certain ways as well. The whole idea of race is really explored a lot in Vengeance Turns, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And none of it is pretty. In the conversation they have here about, being able to walk into town and stuff, none of it is meant to be flattering to anybody involved. It was a terrible time. And if you think racism was bad today, my God, the late 1800s was an awful time for Black people, and especially for indigenous in America. This speech I always liked from Delicate. It again is very grounding. It's like where we don't just get exposition and some time to kind of transition, but we also get a sense of Delicate's control. If this were the X-Men, if the Lost People were the X-Men, I would always think of Delicate Poison as Professor X. She's the one who is sensitive. She knows, people's motivations, and she knows how to encourage them. And she's not afraid to upset the apple cart to see a positive result in the bigger mission. Just like right here. She poisoned her brother. And it's such a neat moment just because of the fact that she's willing to go this far to help someone else. But mainly the idea is just showing how much in control she is, that she is going to be the one that decides, how this mission goes. We shot everything that you see with Ghost with Silent Knives Protects, all the exterior scenes that where he's in the camp. All of Nevin's stuff was shot in one day. And in fact, if you pay attention at the end of Volume 1, when Simon is coming out of the tent, pay very close attention, and you'll notice that Ghost should be in a couple of the shots, and he's not. Some creative editing there. And then here, this is where like the adventure really like kicks off. We've established that there's a change, like I said, that starts with that nightmare, that hallucination sequence at the beginning, and then extends through her battle, her proving herself in her battle in the warrior circle, and then the sex with Ghost. And now she and Delicate ride off, and really, this is where the adventure really begins, is with the incident at the Sutherland place. There was a point, and again, if you listen to the Lethal Voice podcast, you can listen to more details on this, but there was a point in developing Vengeance Turns when I was pretty sure that it might not happen. And at that point, I kind of was willing to settle for just even shooting a short, after spending so much time on it. And the short that we almost shot as like a proof of concept, that was going to be the least thing that we did. I was sure of that, was going to be this chapter, the incident at the Sutherland place. Always been one of my very favorites, and it still is. Gloria is one of my favorite characters. Any character that eats teeth, that snacks on teeth, come on. But she serves a really important function in the story as well, and that is that we see that after Rebecca is, transformed into Mia, that there's the idea of brain damage, and that Mia is more violent than she used to be and a little crazy. And I wanted to bring a character in that shows that there's still much more violent and much crazier out there. And that's where we get Gloria. And the way I would refer to Gloria as Amanda and I were developing the character was that she was basically a feral person. Like if you imagine like a cat that lives outside, and is just born outside and never has had human contact. That's a lot of the way that I imagined Gloria being. And that Delicate Poison essentially is the only person that can get close to this wild animal in the form of a human, that we call Gloria. And when she introduces herself, it's in the script, and I may have just been talking over it, but she introduces herself as Gloria, just Gloria, and that became her name. As we talked about her on the shoot, during editing, it was always we really called her Gloria, just Gloria. I love the fact that she shows up wearing a butcher's apron as well. It kind of gives you an idea that she expects things to get messy. And if you listen to this story here, at the end of the day, she basically says she only brings this guy because she needed something to do, because she's, basically has ADHD and she gets bored easy, and she just wanted somebody's ass to kick on the way. And so that's the reason she brought him. But here she goes ahead and finishes him off. And we get to see that there's because she is wilder and even crazier and more disturbed than Mia, we get to see that dynamic play out between her and Mia as well, because they both only have delicate poison in common, and they don't really seem to like each other much beyond that. This was fun for them again. No stunt people, so just having my actors fighting and working out the choreography on this stuff was a blast. And then the claws that we used were these plastic claws that I bought online, and so there's a lot of me going in there and like kind of trying to drop out the sound of the plastic claws bumping against each other, and instead adding in some metal clanking and stuff. Here's where we start getting more, parts of the story, and then digging in, because she reveals like where they're going, and that this is like the next step and so forth. And so we also get to see the Sutherland family puts a name onto some people that were actually in the first movie. And you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. We have Mrs. Sutherland and her daughter coming back. And remember, originally, all this was meant to be one film. And so people would have made a stronger connection when they finally do see the Sutherland family. Well, here's one of the lines. There's a few lines that you write in, for action movies and stuff that are, like lines like, the Terminator, I'll be back, or hasta la vista, baby, stuff like that. Mia's in this were like, now that we got names for these Walking Dead men, let's go put them in their coffins or something like that. And of course, her big one all the way through it is, you and me, we think alike. And then she starts killing you and stuff. But that particular line started with her husband in Volume 1, but something she says throughout both movies after that. Sometimes there's a couple of shots where Kelsey Jaffer playing Delicate Poison was really like breaking and would start cracking up because of the actor playing Gloria and the dialogue that she's delivering here. Now, again, people might not know if you didn't see the commentary for Vengeance Turns Volume 1 yet, but Paula Llewellyn was actually a native-born Mexican actress who moved to the United States, and she does speak English and speak English fluently. But throughout the film, I coached her on her accent, so I wasn't just her director. I was also like her dialogue coach. And there's certain lines that we would work out, and like we would cut, and then she would come up to me, and I would like literally tell her how to say it, and then she would repeat, the cadence, the drawl, and everything that I had, and bring that into onto the screen. And this was our longest day, man. This was out in Malibu at the horse farm, and we shot all of our exterior scenes for Volume 1 and Volume 2 here. And this particular day, we were all there for 19 hours. David Ruano and his brother and his dad were there for more like 21 or 22 hours. Just set it up and tear it down. But this was right at the very end of the night. And Paula was at the point where she could barely even talk anymore. There's the Sutherlands. And then the little girl's like, hey, it's the Desert Witch, which is a callback to Volume 1. And then I love this close quarters shootout where people just start shooting and hitting each other and stuff like that. It was fun to shoot as well. And just the melee, the mayhem of the scene. I was worried that it may not work out the way that I wanted it to, but it really was fun to shoot, and it seems like it's a lot of fun to watch as well. Amanda and I both really liked the idea from other movies that we'd seen about leave one of them alive or two of them alive in this case, so that we can torture one of them in front of another one, and that way at least one of them is going to talk. And so this was one of the most fun scenes that Amanda and I wrote, and it was one of the scenes that I really was so excited to shoot. Again, because I love the character of Gloria, and this is where we see Gloria at her most Gloria. Amanda and I, who kept giving each other kind of challenges as we would write the script, Amanda gave me the challenge of how could I use a horse bit in a scene. And so here's where we see that. I like writing horrific stuff, man. So if you give me a challenge like, hey, use this horse bit in a inventive and violent way, I'm gonna do it. So, and then again, getting to use this character of Gloria to deliver it was fun. And I remember as I delivered these pages to Amanda, and we would send pages back and forth, she was just blown away. She was like, "What the hell?" But it was a great way to do a scene, because that way we get to extract important information for the plot. We get to have some exposition, but it doesn't come freely. There's this whole thing about having a horse bit in your mouth, and that we know that Gloria is violent, and so she wants to hurt this guy. And we see the glee, that she experiences as she hurts him. And it gets worse and worse as it goes. And then we see in a minute we understand that Mia has got Oscar Gomez sitting there watching all this, so that he knows there's zero hope for him just to walk away. For me, this is where the revenge aspect really kicks in, because in the first film she kills people, but essentially they're the wrong people. They're bad guys, but she overreacts in the situation and is extremely violent. And it's not really until volume 2 that she actually is getting revenge. And so, again, this is like the point where the revenge actually starts, is in just a second as she deals with Oscar Gomez. If you wonder why Delicate Poison has a British accent, again, I talked a little bit about that on the commentary for Volume 1, and I've definitely talked about it on the Lethal Voice podcast. But there's a thing where the Lost People are all like mutts, like me. And so Delicate Poison is part Kumeyaay, and her other part of her ancestry is from India, the part of India that is today Pakistan. And so when she was a kid, she actually got kidnapped by a British soldier and brought up by him, at first as his daughter, then later as his wife, and was schooled very formally. And so she's actually got a very, particular accent. And her brother, Ghost with Silent Knives Protects, has his own particular accent. And that's because his is more of a combination of Hindi and Native American, because he never received the formal training. This is all filmed out in Big Bear, California, which was just absolutely beautiful. We didn't lack for beautiful scenery, I'll tell you that much. Of course, then the problem becomes that in some of this stuff, that clearly some of this architecture is more modern than it should be. So we're kind of begging the viewers to look past that and just look at how neat it looks, and forgive us for the anachronistic nature of it. Look at the violence. Listen to the amazing characters. Don't pay attention to the modern architecture that doesn't belong. Thank you. This character is one of the most reprehensible in the movie, and so he actually says the N-word in it, and he's the only other character that says the N-word in both movies is Jefferson Coltrane, and it's in this movie as well. It was really a sensitive thing, man, and I talked to all the actors involved, and like this actor who had to say it, and then to Jamal Gardner who says it, and let them know that at the end of the day, hey, if you don't want to say it, I'm all about that. We can forget that word ever existed. But it's weird because, again, the movie is not authentic or accurate to history or anything like that. but it is kind of not wanting to, shy away from more brutal aspects of what was going on. And so we made him pay a severe price for it as well. Horrible thing comes out of his mouth, and an entire massive knife goes in. So it's been always one of my big beliefs about freedom of speech anyway, is that, you do have, the right to say whatever you want in America, but that doesn't mean that it's consequence free. And here's Gloria digging the teeth out of his mouth, and look how excited she is. Yeah, we're going to have Gloria's teeth candy for sale soon. That's going to be really cool. And now, of course, Mia is ready to deal with Oscar. And she's like, okay, you saw all that. Now, if you're ready to talk, then, maybe I can let you go. But there's clearly no intention of letting the guy go. They just want more information. And Mia wants her revenge. This was another scene, though, where there was a lot of compromise between what I'd put on the page and what we were actually able to shoot. Because in the script, she cuts his ear off. She does all kinds of stuff. And we get to kind of indicate that some here and a few things like that. But it really relied on the acting skills of both the actors involved more than it did the FX. So I was not displeased. I thought they pulled it off. But again, like I said, it was a compromise. Not bad, right? That's him reacting to having his ear cut off. And of course, the scene continues to escalate. Mia says a few things, like, for instance, here in a minute, she talks to him about the fact that he works for a black man, and she says it as if that's a bad thing and stuff. And of course, that's not really Mia expressing her feelings. It's definitely not expressing my feelings or Paula's feelings. She's simply playing with the dynamic between Oscar Gomez and Jefferson Coltrane, who she's already, during Vengeance Turns Volume 1, seen this kind of animosity between, and has the sense that Jefferson has his own racism, and she knows, that Gomez here does too. And so part of the whole thing about Vengeance Turns Volume 1 and Volume 2 is the idea of, of the social and economic aspects of like ethnocentrism, racism, and all of that, but without being heavy-handed. There's no message in it, but there's just definitely some exploration of the themes. This is one of my favorite moments, just where they talk about, basically where Gloria threatens to cut his balls off and that she'll keep one to eat later. And we already know that she keeps teeth in her little pouch, so it sounds pretty believable. And originally we wanted, Mia to be much more scarred up than she is in our film. But it still works. We were able to sell the fact that she's scarred, and the scarring is less now than it was. But, if I'd had my way originally, then like here, she still would be pretty massively scarred. It would be more healed than it had been earlier, but the scars would be deeper and more pronounced. But we used what we had, and we definitely played it the way we wanted to, as far as the fact that it's much worse at the beginning, and that it's, it's more healed now because it's basically several months or a year later. In the commentary for Vengeance Turns Volume 1, I was talking some about how I created all the muzzle flashes for the film, and that's not all. In this film, you'll see in a minute, I created a blood splash effect as well that I was extremely proud of. I was so ridiculously happy with myself when I created that effect that I knew that I was definitely going to keep it in the film no matter what. So back to the idea of it can be dangerous when the writer is also the director and the editor. There can be a little bit of self-indulgence going on. You have to let me know if you think that it works or not. I love all this that leads up to it, though. It's a little bit of cat and mouse between Mia and Oscar Gomez. He has no idea how bad things are really getting ready to get for him. She does, though. She knows there's no escape. I like the look on Mia's face right here as she's like just staring him down. The little bit of joy that she is allowing into her life because she's going to kill someone, you know? It's pretty ironic and a little scary, honestly. Now here's where he really makes his big mistake. Saying that he doesn't know who she is, you know? He doesn't remember. And he took everything from her. Yeah, if you notice, there's some different lighting and stuff changing as you go through this scene. And we had this place for one day. And man, oh man, we were running against the clock the entire day. And almost lost our light. If you're interested in that story, I'll refer you again back to the Lethal Voice podcast, because that's where I'll be getting into some detail about that whole day. I like this. Again, we see that idea of resolve coming onto Mia. Rebecca is long gone now, and there's just she is so settled into what she is going to do now that Paula Luelmo puts it on the screen in such a nice way. Here's my big blood effect. Not bad, right? I created that from scratch in After Effects. I was very, very pleased with myself, as I said. And I love these times when she goes feral, very like Wolverine in a berserker rage kind of a thing. And I don't know, it hits me harder with her, this little thing, just getting so wound up. And here they can't even touch her, And again, this is another one of my favorite lines. Another one of my favorite shots, even from both movies, is just this shot of her sitting here like this. And then the line is so cool. One of my favorite moments. Again, because it's just like the first movie is so much about her just going through the trauma of losing her family and starting to recover and just kind of like finding a new identity. And then volume 2 is so much more about the revenge and the satisfaction that she gets, from going on this mission of revenge. Paula Luelmo sold it in a great way. And things are fun during this part too. It reminds me again of with like Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2, and as the bride is just like checking the names off our list became pretty fun too. That's me. I'm the bearded guy here. I'm Frank Ford. And it's always tough. I always like put myself into these movies and then struggle with having enough time to rehearse and do what I need to do with my actors, that I get paranoid when it's time to shoot my scenes that I'm going to flop. And so I'm always very judgmental about my own acting in my movies. But I had a blast, and I really enjoy where she gets to exact her revenge and dispatch me. It was wild, though, just the idea of keeping track of all your extras, people coming in and out, crossing camera, Sometimes, as when I was editing this, you'll have the same person cross camera the same direction twice, and you can't do that. So it becomes a challenge to sit there and get it all together in a way that is dynamic, action packed, and also still has at least some small sense of logic, and people aren't just like repeating, showing up over and over again. And I love Paula's telling the story here. It's she is so over the top, and I told her to be. But as she explains about that, the desert witch, who is her essentially, is out there and terrorizing poor people, and again, using, like she had done against Ghost, she uses her own sexuality to kind of like mesmerize the guys in the bar. By, as she's like telling the story, you'll see in a minute, like part of her shirt is popped open, so there's no nudity or anything like that, but especially for the 1870s, these guys were just like spellbound. I forgot about this. Otis. So Otis the drunk. So I refer to myself as a pop culture vulture. When I had my band, Wild Love Rebellion, I would like to stick in little pieces of songs that I really liked, just drop them into our songs, into our lyrics. And then now, as a writer and filmmaker, I constantly am taking characters, character names, little things, and just like dropping them into movies. And here we have Otis the drunk, and that's like my homage to the Andy Griffith Show. So I love this scene. The guns are at the chapel, and then going over here to the wanted poster. This was fun to do. Boom, boom, and then do like a quick turn like that. Now here's what I was talking about before, where she leaves these guys spellbound and kind of like really distracts them badly by rubbing on her body and having her shirt open a button or two. And if you really pay attention, you see the guy in the back over there on the right. It looks a little bit like Abe Lincoln. He gets blown away here in a minute, but then again, just because of logistics and we couldn't avoid it happening, he shows back up. If you really watch at the end of the movie, so we decided that they were twins. that it's one brother gets killed now, and the other brother shows up at the end of the movie. We had to do something to keep ourselves sane. And that's Otis the drunk that's standing there with the dark stuff on up front too. So we had to repurpose actors as much as possible. Literally one of my favorite moments is when this guy stops playing. And of course he wasn't really playing there. He's just like, miming. And then David Ruano actually recorded the guitar piece that you actually hear here. That's David playing and just like piped in over top. I love this shot. Yeah, even with all the way to Delicate saying shush, Then there's the church, the quick zoom in. We called the prostitutes in the movie we called them prosies, because that's like an old British term. So like even in the credits they're referred to as prosy. Here comes Gloria. You can't let a dead person around Gloria for too long because she's going after those teeth. Great shot. And then this is literally the first movie that I'd ever edited in Premiere Pro, and it's the first feature that I've ever edited, period. And so there were a couple things I really got interested in trying, and here's one of them, was doing split screens while I was editing. I just somehow felt like this had to be done as a split screen, and man, it was a challenge learning how to do this and make it work, especially stuff like that, the transition of going like the sliding up and the different ways that I did it. And I was watching that series, The Flight Attendant, I think is what it's called, on HBO with Kaylee Cuoco, while I was starting to work on the edit for this. And they started doing some of this, split screen and stuff on that show. And I just felt like it was destiny talking to me and saying, yes, proceed. You must do this. And so the split screen stuff here in Volume 2 is, again, unique to Volume 2. But I feel like it's one of the defining factors. Ooh, I love that shot when I get killed. That was so much fun to film. I had that little plastic piece in my mouth, and when she acts like she rams her claw through me, I just like popped it out from under my tongue. And then I love just the whole thing, the very cowboy-esque. It's a cowboy movie, it's a Western. But instead of a group of guys coming in and unloading with the bullets, it's just the women. And I love it. And there's that breakaway glass again. So much fun to film this stuff. All the blood and stuff that you see here is all animated by me as well. One of my favorite shots is like right here. It freezes, but the smoke is still moving. And I don't know. I just, for some reason, that was something I got kind of obsessed with, was showing that shot. And I love when it happens. There's Steven Cicerone. He actually was in my first movie, The End of Fun, that never came out. And so when it came time to do this one, he was one of the first people that I called. And then we had a couple people that had really never acted before. And the guy that's talking to him right now was one of them. So it was interesting, like, to edit and get all his dialogue in here and get it the way we needed it. Because, again, the guy had very limited experience in acting, and he still did a great job. And it's fun to play with. This little town that we're in is literally like one little street, and the guy's house that owns it is right next to it, directly across from this, in fact. Yet with camera angles and running around and takes and all this different stuff, you can actually make this seem, at least feel like it's a bit bigger than it is. You really have no idea how small this little town is that we were shooting in. And again, playing with like role reversals and messing with the dynamics. I love that it's the sheriff, the ultimate male, that's on his knees and begging, crying for help to the female badass, that is in charge here, Mia. It just kind of, my whole goal with Vengeance Turns all the way through was just to kind of turn the typical Western onto its ear. And this scene is a great expression of that. All of this right now, though, is the result of, again, logistics. Actors that couldn't, work the whole schedule, what was available to us with the town, with horses, with everything. And so this is where, if you ever read the script, the screenplay is a bit different from about here on. This whole scene is different, and then what follows is different. There's quite a few things that are changed a bit just to help us move through the reality of what was available to us and keep the movie going. And this was just a fun thing for me, actually, is that where Mia's walking along here and telling her story, and she's in this, like, saloon dress, which clearly is not a Mia thing, that Delicate Poison shows up with her, like, superhero outfit. Basically, here's your costume. In the original script, it's Simon that does this. But again, we had to make a few changes for logistical reasons on scheduling and stuff. This also is in Big Bear. That's literally during our last day of shooting, and almost one of the very last shots that we did was like right here. Big drama. We ended up having to make another change during this scene. One of the other changes that we had to make was because the night before, the actor playing Gloria, just Gloria, was kind of having a problem, and she had to go home. We had to send her home. So we got part of it with her on one day, and then there's another shot where we had to use the sound man and just shoot it over his shoulder, pretend it was her. And this is just like, again, I love moments like this in movies, period. But in a Western, when you're maybe halfway through the movie and your main star gets shot in a way that looks fatal, it's a, to me, it's a big moment. It's stuff I've always loved in movies. So this is like a big moment for me when we wrote this in the script, and it's leading to one of my very favorite scenes in the whole thing. I have no idea why, but I'm fairly obsessed with musicals. One of the first movies I remember seeing was Tommy by The Who. And then one of the first movies I fell in love with was the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So maybe that helps explain it. But I like injecting little pieces of musicals into movies, and I would love to shoot an entire musical, like a horror musical. It's a whole other story, though. Great shot. Great shot, David. I like this too. The shot is good. The pacing is good. And the setup is good for what we're getting ready to go to. So again, this is an idea that I had that Amanda was not as crazy about as I was, but she actually didn't have as big a problem with this as she did the opening scene with the voice in darkness. But man, this was fun to film. This is all, again, in my bedroom in Gardena. We had it set up as a green screen room. And so every single bit of this was shot the same day as the green screen stuff at the beginning with the voice in darkness and Mia. And of course, none of these people are together. All of this stuff is just me compositing. And got some help from David Ruano on this one as well. This is kind of a team effort between me and David to make the musical part work. And then just like I wanted, it comes out of the musical, and you just see again that she's tripping. I liked playing with the idea of Mia's brain damage. You know, in the first film, it's her hallucinating and killing the wrong people as she's like flashing back on the attack. And then here showing that she's still, you know, brain damaged. And in a way, it kind of reminds me of the Big Lebowski, you know, the little dream sequences and dance sequences in that. But yeah, just to show that she's not completely all there. And it also shows some dynamics in, you know, Jefferson Coltrane's personality, which is one of the things that Jamal Gardner and I really wanted to do, was show that this guy's not one note. He's cruel, he's insane and violent, but he's not one note. He likes to sing, he likes to have fun, but you know, once he's back to focusing his rage and his ire on you, you basically wish he would go back to singing. But this was a fun scene to write. Again, it's a little compromised because of just, again, what we actually had available to us with numbers of actors and so forth. If you notice, this is actually me. I'm one of the background actors here. I'm wearing the long thing, and I have my face covered so that you can't see that it's me. I'm the one that'll grab her in a minute. And again, this is just like the pitfalls of indie movie making. So I ended up playing, you know, several other background characters other than my character of Frank Ford. I love the interaction, though, the play between Jefferson Coltrane and Mia, though. And again, this plays with the idea of Jefferson Coltrane's idea about, you know, his own ideas of racism and social, you know, social order and things like that, which I thought were really important to the movie to show that, you know, this different ways that different characters have of looking at social value. And man, again, when we had to make compromises and stuff in the first version, Simon's with her all the way through this part. But again, just do some scheduling and stuff. We had to get him out and then bring him back. And I love that reveal. That was like one of the greatest parts of having to compromise, was that particular reveal right there. Azim Vecchio is a great actor, and just the moment, the play again between him and Jamal Gardner as Jefferson and Simon is amazing. And then Mia's reaction is amazing as well. And I like seeing her get up and start fighting. And, really, when you think about it, she's got nowhere to go. But seeing another family member, now it's Simon, in danger, is inspiring to her. It's motivating to her. And it gets her moving, even when I think that she's not sure of exactly where she's going to go or what she's going to do. She wants to protect Simon. She wants to fight. And of course, there's also the aspect that this is Jefferson who was in control, dominated the situation when the bad guys, killed her family in Volume 1. And so she's been waiting forever just to face him. So I think that she would gladly die here if she were able to injure or possibly kill Jefferson Coltrane. And she ends up killing one of the lackeys, which I like, doing those little freeze frame things. And that's David Ruano's brother, by the way. That's Andrew. He's a great artist. You can check out Ari Studio on Instagram. You can see his stuff. Man, we really did a lot with a little. This is back to being at the first place in Big Bear, California, and shooting at night, out in kind of a neighborhood, and nobody bothered us. Nobody cared. Everybody was pretty chill about us making noise in the woods outside their house at night. I like that punch right to the camera, and then just him wailing on her. Like he clearly has no regard whether it's a man or a woman. And now he's peeing on her. Again, that to me is just like, it shows the levels that he wants to go to debase her. He wants, it's not enough to hurt her. He really feels like he has to humiliate her. He wants her to know that he's better than her. And this was fun too, by the way, just the filming of it, because we're in this, the exteriors are filmed in Big Bear, and then the second that they go inside, we're back inside the set that David Ruano and his brother and dad built over top of a flower shop in downtown LA. And that's wild because it was the very first stuff that we shot, but it doesn't really come back and until the end of the movie here. Yeah, right there. This is all like the very first day of shooting, one of the very first scenes that we shot with these guys together, as opposed to where we just were as exteriors was some of the very last shots that we all did together. So it was pretty interesting. And they were able to do a great job of really keeping consistent into their characters and stuff. There's a video I put out where I showed how we had to hang Paula like that. David Ruano made a rig. He tested it on himself first. But then Paula almost got hurt here. She really gave it everything she had. And this is, like I said, our very first day. In that whole effort to turn everything on its ear, we get our big reveal here as well. I love that Mariah Hart, playing Hester Blake, gets thrown in and slapped. And, it looks pitiful at first, but it seems off. And Mia picks that up, and Mia knows. And so the way that their conversation turns as they talk is really a blast. And this was, again, our very first day of shooting. And so having these two actors develop this turn, as this discovery that's happening on both their parts, they both just did really an amazing job. And then after this, all we had to do was, film a whole movie to make it live up to that very first day of shooting. But interestingly, the screenplay for Vengeance Turns was about 138 pages. And when we first started, we had people telling us maybe we were going to get $1 million to film it and things like that. Maybe we were going to have named talent in it and things. But at the end of the day, we filmed what we were able to film, and it didn't have any stars in it. And it was going to be almost 3 hours long. And so when I went and talked to David about splitting it into 2 volumes, he knew exactly everything that I was going to tell him, and he had already felt the same things. So making it into a 2-volume movie was a no-brainer for us. Yeah, it's fun watching Mia call Hester out, and then it's fun watching Hester just go ahead and start fessing up. And all this is in the corner of an attic above a flower shop. David and his brother and his dad built a part of a barn up there so that we could film this. And David's dad built that shelf in the background, which is a breakaway, and it falls apart when we need it to in a minute. And believe it or not, if you've seen Volume 1, the wood on that shelf is also the overturned cart where when Mia saves the Sutherland family from Bronson. We repurposed a lot of stuff. It was really hot up there too, so it made the idea of sweating in that barn easy for the actors. Everybody was nice and sweaty all the time. As soon as we would turn on the AC, you couldn't hear anything in there. So, like, the second that we were done shooting, we would turn on the AC, and of course, literally no chance to shoot. We'd open the doors and blow smoke out and everything. But while we were filming, it was just boiling hot. And when we were shooting this day, when we started, we actually had 2 makeup people, but one of our makeup people left. It's hard to keep everybody involved and keep everybody on board for a film. It's one of the reasons why whenever I do shoot, I try to keep as compact a schedule as possible and try to shoot people out as fast as possible. So right now, Paul is actually standing like on a crate or something with her hands up on that hook. But she did literally wear a harness and get hung from this hook. And when she starts to fight with Hester in a minute, while we were filming, she almost like threw her hip out. And this was on the very first day of shooting. She almost was injured to the point where we couldn't continue. So it was a pretty scary moment on that very first day. Yeah, you'll see that happen in just a minute. But like a trooper, man, she just suffered right through it. We didn't even know there was a problem until the next day. And she starts telling us, remember when this happened, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I almost couldn't continue. And oh my God, I was so upset. I don't want to hurt anybody. And if they do get hurt, I want them to tell us immediately. You know, I don't want them to suffer through it. I love the idea of film is first, but in reality, you know, health is first. There it is right there. When she kicks her legs out like that. I love the little freeze frames though. There she is. There's the real Hester. Help me up, guys. And now if you pay attention, I was telling you earlier about the twin. The guy that gets killed in the bar earlier. And then he shows back up. Here he is. It was kind of unavoidable, just by the way we had scheduled and shot things. So yeah, it was just like cross your fingers at the end of the day and pray that people don't hate you. This is one of the things me and David talked about. But I told him, I said, literally, dude, I'm praying for people to watch my movies close enough that they actually like leave comments like, hey, isn't the same guy at the end who was already killed in the bar scene earlier? It's a pretty special feeling just to know that people are watching your movies close enough to see those details without you having to tell them. So I honestly don't mind getting called out on a lot of the little problems and stuff that I know exist throughout movies. I'm usually one of the first people to point them out when we're watching them on playback or, the final version. I'm like, hey, did you guys notice so and so? And people are like, no. And I'll play it back and show them like, yeah, there's the microphone right there. Or here's the actor's battery pack or whatever. There's a comic book called Vengeance Turns Explosions of Truth, and it literally continues the story that we end in volume 2. It kind of carries it forward and kind of establishes like a new direction. And if we ever did get lucky enough to continue with another Vengeance Turns movie, I would love to make it like where they're on a train. I just think that would be really cool to film the whole thing on, or not the whole thing, but most of it on a train. Lots of battles on top of the train and running through and all kinds of stuff. It'd just be a blast. It's so interesting for Paula Llewellyn as Mia because she had to really play a big, wide variety of emotion on the very first day, from anger to depression to everything. She's sitting here hanging from this hook, and it's at the end of the story. And then she basically has to spend the rest of the shoot developing the feelings that lead to what we see here now, because this stuff was filmed on the first day. And believe it or not, that's a bit of a challenge for an actor. It's a lot easier when you just shoot things in order, because then you can just like let yourself develop and feel the feelings of the character. But when you film things out of order like this, you've got to manifest how I believe this character should be at the end of this film and get it all there, and then pray that everything you do through the rest of the film, builds logically toward that. And of course, a big part of that is my job as the director. But, through talking with the actors, through having skilled actors, it's not as dangerous. It doesn't feel like a high wire act. I never felt concerned about it. I talked to the actors about it. We went over everything, and the fact that we were starting in a tricky place, because we literally filmed the very first day, the opening, the prologue stuff was the very first day of shooting, and then this was the second day of shooting. So it was interesting that the first day of shooting is the opening of the movie, the second day of shooting is the very end of the movie, and then the rest of the shoot is filling in everything in between. And that took some good organization. Before I made my first movie, I had never heard the word shot list before. And understanding how to make a shot list is critical for making a movie, period. But especially if you are an indie filmmaker and you are trying to do things out of order. I mean, we didn't have a script supervisor, a script coordinator, real line producer or anything like that. Pretty much all of that was on my shoulders. And so I had to set it up, develop it, talk to the actors about it, and then make sure that throughout, that we were on track, that we weren't too big, or that here at the end that we were big enough, that we would have somewhere to go. Yeah, Mariah shot 2 days. She shot 1 day outside the general store, very subdued, and then she shoots this day, the first day, as really evil Hester, so she got to play a pretty wide dynamic as well. One of the things I really like, it's a detail that I've never heard anybody notice, is over here in the background next to Hester's face right there is, first of all, an American flag with way too many stripes on it. But on top of that is like a little monument. Those are all scalps that Jefferson has stolen. And one of them, of course, is Mia's. I've still got those. I've got Mia's anyway. I just saw it today. So when we really dove into this was being written in 2017. This is not like not too long after, honestly, when the person who's president now had first started occupying the office back then. And I wanted to really dig in and express how, like, a world of greed is a world of evil, but I didn't want to have the main villain be like an orange white guy, weighs like 500 pounds or something like that. And so it was a lot more fun for me to give that those feelings and that power to Jefferson Coltrane. And this is exactly what Jamal Gardner and I had been talking about anyway, about giving some depth to a really, really evil character like Jefferson Coltrane, which, like, earlier we see the glee that Mia has as she's like exacting her revenge and as she sees her plan coming together. And similarly, you see a certain amount of joy on Jefferson's face here as he has his what he believes to be the final confrontation with Mia, and actually have like a almost like a Bond villain style explanation to her about, you know, why she's got to go and where they're at in history, how things are changing. He tells her, you know, that this was again part of me speaking about my feelings on about how modern society has done what it's done and built America on the bones of and the legacy of those who were here before us. And Jefferson just gets to actually comment on it. But then I love, here's the fighting. She tells him, you know, you and me, we think alike. Whack. This was fun too. These guys fighting was just a blast. And I mean, Jamal Gardner and Paulo the Welmo. They rehearsed this, and then the rolling around and all of it is just a blast. Her being, you know, a badass enough to take on this big dude is just amazing. And there's, again, like I said, David's dad built that shelf so that it would collapse like that. And I don't want you to notice, but if you do, you'll notice that the wood inside the barn is going one way on the door, and the wood there outside is going the other way. Literally, this last shot with Simon here was a pickup shot that David shot for me one day while I was teaching, and they shot it again in David's backyard. That's all we had access to. We didn't have the barn doors anymore, and so we just had to shoot it on a different piece of a wood fence. But again, we justified it to ourselves in our minds, saying that outside they had like an extra security door, and that's where Simon is. I tell myself a lot of things in movies, even when I'm not the one making them. I'll fill in the plot holes if I like the movie enough. And this final confrontation between Simon and Jefferson was really, really important to me, and another great use of split screen. And there's a couple of different things I wanted to accomplish here. I grew up watching slasher movies and horror movies, and I loved, you know, when I was a kid, I would just go crazy and jump like crazy when at the end of a movie like Halloween or Friday the 13th, they would think that they killed the bad guy, and then all of a sudden you see him raising back up and coming back for more. But with Vengeance Turns, it actually was going to serve a very specific and special purpose, because as you're going to see in a minute, I set it up so that literally both characters get the chance to kill Jefferson. I just thought it was important, and it's something that Amanda and I talked about, and we both liked it, and it adds a big level of drama to the end of this, and it harkens back and pays homage to those slasher movies for sure. But here we see, again, when there's a lot of themes in Vengeance Turns, Volume 1 and Volume 2, revolving around family. And what does it mean? You know, family that you are born into versus the family that you find. And that's what a lot of this conversation is about. As you know, as Simon hears horrifying details about his own mother's murder and things. And then, he is on a completely different level now than he had been in Vengeance Turns Volume 1 at the beginning, where he's very weak and very just obsequious and servile to his father and even to the other thugs around them. There's a comic book story out there called Growing Pained, which shows this as well. Simon growing up with his father. But here, this is a completely different character. This is the character that we see kind of being born in Vengeance Turns Volume 1, when Mia's making her claw for the first time, and Simon's like, there's something special going on here, something that he was wanting to protect. We see that new Simon starting to be born there, and now we see Simon as a man. And ironically, that was the thing his father wanted the worst from him at the beginning of Vengeance Turns Volume 1, is just to be a man. And when he becomes a man, it's Jefferson's undoing. So when Mia kills him, like I said, it was kind of important for him to be killed twice. She does it with a gold bar, with the gold that Jefferson was so proud of explaining to her that was the future. That scream is me, by the way, not Mia, not Paula. And she brains him. I think that's even what it says in the script, that she brains him. She beats his head in with that gold bar. So that was important to me, that, live by the sword, die by the sword. Jefferson, whose whole life was built around the idea of wealth, and that wealth fixes everything. And then, of course, now we see he starts to get back up, true horror movie style. And now his son has the chance to fulfill his legacy, what he had just told him. If I get inside there, I'm going to kill you. And, at the beginning, or in Vengeance Turns Volume 1, when his father's trying to force him to assault Mia and saying that he needs to become a man, and assaulting a woman does not make you a man, but protecting people certainly takes things further that direction. I just love them riding away at the end. They look down, see his body, see him dying, and then they ride away as everything burns. And like I said, there is a comic book called Vengeance Turns Explosions of Truth that literally picks up exactly where this movie ends and starts to take things in a new direction. As I explained at the end of Vengeance Turns Volume 1, I really, really like when people stick around all the way through the credits. And so in a movie like this, or in Vengeance Turns Volume 1, where everything is so heavy, that it's hard to believe that we all loved each other, I like to kind of just let the audience off the hook a little bit at the end by showing some pictures and showing people studying and waiting to film their scenes and stuff like that, just because, I don't know, it seems like it lets them leave in a little happier mood. And it's more something that's more, I don't know, it's fun to stay for. It's a palate cleanser. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. After this horrifying stuff that you just sat through, it's a nice palate cleanser to see how everything actually went down. And I love putting BTS stuff in there, like this, with Paula acting crazy on that very first day. I made the credit reel. I do all this stuff, so I learned how to make credits, and it's interesting, controlling the speed, that they roll and things like that. And I had, unfortunately, because I did do the credits on both movies, I think on this one, the original version of it, I left off Mariah Hart, and she's a key figure. She's critical in Vengeance Turns Volume 1 and Volume 2. She's the bad guy. There's me with Kelsey and Gloria, just Gloria. It was fun we took a ton of pictures. And so, like I said, there is the Lethal Voice podcast where I talk about making both of these movies and how one movie became two movies and what it was like to make the whole thing during the COVID, pandemic. But also there's the newsletter and the Instagram site, Instagram page where I put out pictures and stuff too. So the stuff that you see here at the end, there are literally hundreds more pictures and some video and stuff that'll be going out onto the Lethal Voice newsletter and onto the Instagram as well. If you want to, take a look at just more behind the scenes stuff. This part was so much fun to film. And then if you notice, you got David walking at the end of this. Yeah. It was fun just to look through the pictures and decide, what to include with the film. Here's all the people that helped us. Can't live without them. Now, everybody that's on our Patreon will be listed at the end of future productions. Yeah. And there's the dedication to Scott Casey. Scott was integral in keeping this movie alive, man. There were times where I wanted to quit and he just wouldn't let me. And I wish that he had lived to see it. And there I'm telling the whole audience about the Vengeance Turns movie or the comic book again. And there it is. That's artwork by Rob Moran. The actual cover for the comic that's out there on sale is by Kurt Belcher, who does the interior art here and did a lot of the character design work with me on the movie. And this was right here was about one of the best feelings ever, was what you're getting ready to see. Thanks, everyone.